Hello and welcome back to the First Look series. Today we're going to be taking a look at the SDP WZ Grom, a Polish Tier 8 premium Polish tank destroyer with the Polish tank destroyer gimmick of having a gun that is better at close range than at short range. This tank is going to be an interesting one for sure, and is going to be one to definitely keep our eyes out coming in the coming months, because we're likely going to see it before the end of this year. So statistically, this tank is going to be a bit complicated because its DPM is very varied depending on how far away you're shooting. So if you are within 50 meters of your opponent and you remain within 50 meters of your opponent, yeah, this tank has terrifying DPM. 3,100 DPM, and if you use a Bond rammer on this tank, lordy, that's 3.6k at tier 8. That's terrifying. But this tank's DPM will completely disappear when you get further away from your opponents. So, for example, if you are at 500 meters from your opponent, so you're sniping at the back of the map and you're shooting an opponent that is at 500 meters away, yeah, your DPM becomes 904. Well, that's quite a stark difference. 3,600 to 904. Yeah. This thing has an alpha damage at close range of 800. So at 50 meters, within 50 meters of your opponents, you will be hitting your opponents for 800. That is a lot of damage. But if you're at 500 meters, you will be hitting for 200 damage. That's not a lot of damage. So you can kind of see the stark contrast and the complexity of this tank's statistics. It is going to be incredible within 50 meters. It's going to be good at middle distance because its DPM is still going to be passable. But the further out you go, the worse this tank's DPM gets, and the worse its alpha damage gets because of the tank's mechanics. So it's going to be up close and personal, as close as you can get to your opponents. Well, what allows it to do that? Well, it has decent penetration. 272mm standard APCR is very good. To be fair, it's not very good. It's good for a tier 8 tier 8 tank destroyer, and its gold penetration of 296 is not best in class, but it's good, and it's APCR. But another gimmick of this tank, which is kind of interesting considering you do play at a close range, it kind of becomes a bit null and void, is this tank's shell velocity. It has really good shell velocity, both rounds do. So standard is 1400, and its gold shell velocity is 1600. It's not as good as the tier 10 Bliskavitska, but it is going to still be very strong. But once again, you want to be playing this tank as close as possible to its shell velocity, kind of becomes null and void. If you're playing at 500 meters, shell velocity is nice to have, but you don't want to be playing it because it's terrible. Does that make sense? Really quite complex. But its gun handling, that is going to be a limiting factor. It doesn't have the best gun handling. It's not going to be laser accurate. Its dispersion of 0.38 will feel a little bit kind of derpy. It won't be reliable. But once again, the closer you play to your opponents, the less dispersion kind of matters. And 2.59 seconds aim time is not great, not terrible. Kind of average, really. It's not the quickest. 45 kilometers an hour is not quick, not slow really either. It kind of sits smack bang average. So you will be able to keep it with heavy tanks, which are going to be the tanks you are going to be fighting with this. Well, does it have the armor to be able to allow you to fight? Well, kind of not really. Let's have a look at its armor now, because there's not much else kind of to this tank. Yeah, as you can see, its live armor is looking pretty weak, kind of towards the topper end of the frontal hull. It's 250, the lower plate 130, the lower part of the hull 170. So pretty much everything this tank is going to fight, apart from tier 6s with stock guns and low penetration, yeah, are going to be able to pen this thing. And when people do load gold, it becomes like 100% pen chance all the way over the entire front of the tank and even towards the cheeks. So you aren't going to be struggling to pen this chance, and if you're playing this, you aren't going to be struggling to pen this tank, and if you're playing it, you are going to be penned, you're not going to be bouncing. So that does definitely limit its ability to be able to play that close range. I am going to sit in front of you and I'm going to kill you damn quick. Because they will also kill you just as quick because you don't have the armor to be able to bounce the shots. So that makes it a little bit harder to play, for sure. And you do only have 1,300 hit points, and you will definitely want to be running a bond hardening on this tank. Even then, you only really have 1,500 with field mods. So, not the greatest. Definitely not going to be able to trade as effectively as you would like to with that great DPM and great alpha, because you're limited by this tank's armor and health. And another limiting factor that I must not forget to mention is this tank's gun arc. Holy crap, does it have a terrible gun arc. It is literally, I believe, 5 degrees either side of dead center. So this tank can basically aim 5 degrees of where it's aiming from the center, which is terrible. And oh my god, does it drive me insane when I'm playing the Bliskavitska, because you have to constantly move and re-aim, constantly move and re-aim. And it's really hard to track tanks as they're driving across in front of you, because you have this terrible gun arc and you kind of have to rotate your hull to be able to keep up with them, which is, so annoying. Drives me insane, it does. Which is definitely a limiting factor. And this tank has terrible view range at 350 meters, so yeah, you ain't going to be spotting for yourself. But once again, you shouldn't really need to be spotting for yourself, because you shouldn't be in a situation where you're sniping. You should be in a situation where you're as close to your opponents as possible. And this tank will definitely struggle on maps where it kind of is forced to snipe. So we're talking Prokhorovka, Malinovka, a little bit of Muravanka to some extent, because you don't have the armor to be able to trade with the heavy tanks. You don't have a position to kind of play that kind of assassin sniper, peek out, shoot, peek back, peek out, shoot, peek back kind of gameplay. It will definitely struggle, and it will be a really tough tank to play on those kind of maps. But if you get this tank on an Ensk, a Himmelsdorf, yeah, be terrified if you're on the enemy team. Have a great time if you're playing it, because this tank will be able to play that role of it will be able to utilize its DPM, and its lack of armor will become less of an object, because it will be able to use a building as its armor instead, if that makes sense. It's going to be definitely a tough tank to play, but if you can master this tank, wow, will you have some good games. And I can already imagine seeing some absolutely terrifying games from really good players in the perfect scenario in this tank. You know, that 3.6k DPM is going to allow some absolutely disgusting things, and especially that 800 alpha as well. When you combine that, yeah, this thing will literally two-shot tier 6 tanks, two-shot most tier 7 tanks, and 2.5-shot most tier 8 tanks, which is going to be facing. But once again, it does struggle to be able to do that because of its lack of armor, its poor gun arc. It's going to be relatively slow to position, but kind of just as slow as heavy tanks. So it's kind of a difficult tank to play. Another thing to note, which I've always found a little bit of an issue with the Bliskavitska, is this tank's lack of rear armor and kind of rear side armor. Yeah, it's a HE magnet. You know, we're talking tanks like the PTK and the KPZ at tier 8 are going to have a field day with the side of this tank. Just with its HE pen, Jesus, they will absolutely slap you silly, because, you know, you only have 80 on the side of your kind of main box, but on your side of your engine, yeah, 50. On your rear, 40. Yeah, they will have some fun with this tank firing HE. But once again, going to be a skill cap tank to play. And this I expect to see in some form of loot box. Whether we see it in the Halloween loot boxes, which will be coming, I believe, in the next kind of 2 or so weeks, normally kind of into the 3rd week of September. We'll see. If not, I'd expect to see this tank for sure, like 100% to be in the Christmas boxes. It would be incredibly bizarre to have had the Polish TD line released and then in the same year not get the premium release. I don't think we would have ever seen that before. But I would not be shocked if we don't see this tank. I would be shocked if we don't see this tank in the Christmas boxes this year. But do let me know what you think about this tank down in the comments. Have you played the Bliskavitska line? Do you enjoy it? Because this tank is going to be kind of a tier 8 Bliskavitska minus the armor, if that makes sense. So do let me know what you think about down in the comments. I read every comment and I'll respond. And if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!